Nyla was the kind of girl whose presence turned even the coldest night warm. Her laughter was soft and melodic, echoing through the narrow village streets like a lullaby that soothed weary hearts. She had a light about her, not of vanity or show but something purer, a glow that seemed to come from within. The elders said she was born under a silver moon, touched by its gentle light before she took her first breath. Whenever darkness fell, her skin appeared to shimmer faintly, as if moonlight still clung to her. Children followed her around during dusk, playing by her side, while travelers often paused to watch her walk, whispering that she carried the moon's blessing. Her kindness was not forced, it flowed as naturally as a river. If someone was hungry, Nyla shared her meal. If someone wept, she sat beside them until the tears stopped. Her wisdom, rare for her age, made people come to her for advice, and she always spoke with a calmness that made even anger dissolve into understanding. Yet not everyone found peace in her light. Her stepmother, Soraya, had once been known for her beauty, sharp, proud, commanding. But as the years passed, the village's admiration shifted. People who once praised Soraya now spoke of Nyla. They said her eyes reminded them of moonlit ponds, and her smile could guide lost travelers home. The more Soraya heard those words, the more her envy festered. She began to watch Nyla closely, her gaze cold and measuring, her heart twisting with resentment. At first, she tried to imitate the girl's grace, wearing her colors, forcing gentle smiles, but the villagers noticed the difference. Nyla's light was effortless. Soraya's was forced, brittle like glass reflecting borrowed light. At night, Soraya would stand by the window and stare at the moon. She would see its glow spilling across Nyla's sleeping face and feel her chest tighten with hatred. "Even the heavens favor her," she would whisper, her nails digging into her palms. She began to dream of shadows, strange, whispering forms that promised her power, that told her light could be stolen. And each morning her jealousy deepened. Nyla, innocent and unaware, continued to live with love. She treated Soraya with respect, offering her food and helping with chores, but her stepmother's smiles grew thinner. The villagers noticed the tension, but none dared interfere, believing family matters were not theirs to mend. Nyla spent most of her evenings by the river, her favorite place in the world. She would sit on the smooth stones, singing softly to the moon as it rose, her reflection rippling with silver hues. To her, the moon was a friend, constant, listening, and kind. She never imagined that same light which comforted her would soon be her only salvation. As the moon waxed full one night, its light pouring like liquid silk across the fields, Soraya watched from the shadows of their hut. Her heart was full of bitterness, her mind twisted by envy. In that glow, she saw not her daughter's beauty, but her own fading reflection, and something in her broke. She whispered a promise to the shadows she had dreamed of, vowing to extinguish the light that made her feel so small. And somewhere deep in the dark corners of the earth, something stirred in answer. Soraya waited until the moon was at its fullest, a night when the world seemed carved from silver and stillness. She called for Nyla in her sweetest tone, masking the venom that coiled in her heart. "My child," she said softly, "come help me gather herbs for the moon's blessing. The healer needs them before dawn." Trusting as always, Nyla followed, her bare feet brushing against the cool earth as they walked toward the forest's edge. The moonlight painted her in soft gold, and even the wind seemed to hum to her, as though nature itself bowed in quiet reverence. They walked deeper and deeper until the trees grew thick and the air turned heavy. The sounds of the village faded behind them, replaced by a strange silence that pressed against Nyla's ears. Finally, they reached a narrow opening in the rocks, a cavern half hidden by vines. Soraya's eyes gleamed. "The herbs grow inside," she whispered. "Go ahead, my dear. I will follow." Nyla hesitated. The entrance exhaled a chill that bit through her skin. Still, she trusted her stepmother's words and stepped into the darkness. Her fingers brushed the cold walls, tracing the stone as she walked. The air smelled of damp soil and old secrets. When she turned to speak, she saw only the faint outline of Soraya, and then even that was gone. The sound of footsteps faded. The door of light from the cavern's mouth began to shrink. Nyla's heart raced. "Mother?" she called softly. There was no answer. Only the echo of her own voice, which seemed to sink instead of bounce. The realization struck her like a blade, she was alone. Then the shadows moved. They did not approach like living things. They unfurled, rising from the floor, peeling themselves off the walls. They took no shape in every shape, forming twisting figures that shifted between smoke and form, whispering in tongues older than thought. "She has brought us the light," they hissed. "The feast begins." Nyla stumbled back, clutching at her chest as her breath turned shallow. The darkness crept toward her, not fast but certain, stretching long tendrils that brushed against her skin. Where they touched, cold seeped into her bones. Her thoughts blurred. The air thickened until even the act of breathing felt heavy, as though the night itself was swallowing her alive. She tried to scream, but the sound dissolved before it reached her lips. The shadows wound around her legs, her waist, her arms, each whisper slicing through her mind like smoke knives. "You are forgotten," they said. "Your light is ours now." But deep inside, something stirred, small, fragile, and impossibly bright. It was not the moon nor the sun, but the quiet courage that had always lived in her heart. Her memories, the laughter of children, the warmth of dawn, the stories she shared, flickered like sparks within the dark. Her body trembled, her breath shallow, but her spirit refused to fade. She closed her eyes and whispered, not with voice but with soul. "Light cannot die." The shadows shrieked, recoiling slightly, their edges trembling. They surged again, angrier, wrapping tighter around her, covering her from head to toe. Her body disappeared into their depths, her arms, her hair, her face, until there was nothing left but darkness pulsing faintly with a silver glow. Then silence. The cavern was empty once more. The moon outside dimmed for a heartbeat as though mourning her descent. But in the deepest part of the shadows, where light was never meant to live, Nyla's essence still shimmered, a defiance the dark could not consume. When dawn came without Nyla's laughter, the village felt wrong. The birds sang, but their notes wavered as though searching for a voice that usually joined them. The marketplace was quieter, the air heavier. Women fetching water from the river glanced at the forest's edge, whispering that something was missing. Children who once ran to Nyla for stories waited outside her small hut, clutching half-woven garlands she had promised to finish. But her door remained closed and her bed untouched. By the second day the rhythm of life began to falter. The cows refused to give milk, goats bleated through the night, and the crops bent under an unseen weight. A strange chill lingered even under the afternoon sun, settling in the corners of homes and hearts alike. The elders gathered in the square, uneasy. One of them, old Morrow, rubbed his gnarled hands together and muttered, "The earth feels sorrow. A spirit of light has gone missing." Soraya, standing among them with her usual false grace, pressed a hand to her chest. "Poor child," she said in a trembling voice. "She left the night before last." She spoke of finding her own path, of seeking a healer far from here. She was always restless, always dreaming too much. Her tone carried practiced grief, but her eyes, cold and calculating, betrayed nothing of truth. The villagers exchanged glances. "Without telling anyone?" asked Kira, the baker's wife. "She wouldn't vanish like that." Nyla loved this place. Perhaps the girl grew tired of her duties, Soraya sighed, her words dripping with gentle venom. "I tried to stop her but she insisted. You know how the young are, full of whims." A silence followed, thin and strained. No one dared accuse her outright, but unease rippled through them like a spreading shadow. The healer, who had often worked beside Nyla gathering herbs, shook her head. "Something unnatural moves through this village," she said softly. "The air feels hollow. Even the moonlight looks paler." That night, as the villagers sat by their hearths, an unnatural cold crept in from the forest. The wind carried whispers, faint, almost like a sigh. Some claimed they heard Nyla's name carried in the breeze, others swore the earth itself groaned beneath their feet. Children cried out in their sleep, dreaming of eyes watching from beneath the ground. By the third day the crops began to wither. The green of the leaves dulled and the soil, once rich and dark, turned gray and dry. Water from the river tasted strange, metallic and bitter. Animals that grazed nearby refused to eat. The elders gathered once again, and this time even Soraya could not hide the flicker of fear that crossed her face. Old Morrow struck his staff against the earth. "This is no ordinary loss," he declared. "When a soul of light is taken, the world itself weeps. The balance is broken." As dusk fell, the villagers lit lanterns and placed them along the paths, hoping to guide Nyla home. The light flickered weakly in the wind, trembling as though unsure where to shine. Mothers whispered prayers. Children held their fathers' hands tightly. Every heart ached, bound by the same quiet dread, that the girl who had once lit their lives with laughter was now swallowed by something vast and unseen. From her window, Soraya watched the glowing lanterns line the village like a trail of guilt. Her lips pressed into a thin smile, but her heart beat faster. Though she told herself Nyla was gone forever, a part of her shivered at the feeling that the girl's light, soft, defiant, eternal, was still watching from somewhere beneath the earth. High above the quiet village, the moon rose that night larger than it had ever been, full, round, and glimmering with an otherworldly silver glow. Its light poured softly over the world, bathing the fields, rivers, and rooftops in a serene brightness that seemed to watch and weep. In the silence of that night, when even the wind refused to move, the moon's pale radiance reached far beyond the village, stretching across valleys and mountains, until it touched the mouth of the dark cavern where Nyla lay hidden. The shadows recoiled slightly at the first touch of the light, hissing as though it burned. Deep inside, where no human eye could see, Nyla's faint breath stirred, and her eyelashes flickered open. She could not see the stars, nor the face of the moon, but she could feel it, its soft warmth brushing against her skin like a mother's hand. Around her, the darkness whispered cruel things, voices of jealousy and spite murmuring that her light was gone forever. But through that web of cruel whispers came another sound, calm and tender as though sung. The darkness around Nyla was thick, alive, and cold. It clung to her like smoke and whispered lies meant to break her heart. Yet within that endless blackness she began to feel a pulse, faint at first, then steady like a heartbeat echoing in the void. It wasn't her own. It was softer, slower, ancient. The rhythm of the moon. Its light did not pierce through the shadows in a single flash. Instead, it seeped in like water through cracks, finding her trembling hands, her weary face, her quiet heart. She opened her eyes, and though she could see nothing clearly, she sensed the direction of that pulse. It was calling her upward, asking her to rise. The shadows snarled as she moved, their cold tendrils pulling at her feet, whispering that she belonged to them now. But Nyla pressed her palms against the unseen walls and whispered to herself, "If there is still a light that knows my name, I will not stop." As she stumbled forward, faint glimmers began to dance around her, fragments of light no larger than fireflies. They hovered near her face, shifting and swaying as though alive. Their glow shimmered softly, not blinding but comforting, and as she reached out, one landed gently on her palm. The moment it touched her skin, a warmth spread through her arm and into her chest. In that warmth she heard a voice, calm and radiant, that said, "Fear is not your enemy, child. It is the night's way of asking if you are ready to see." The voice faded, but its meaning stayed. Nyla took another step and another, until she found herself walking not through the cavern's floor but upon beams of soft light that formed beneath her feet as she moved. Each step forward brought a faint hum in the air, as though the moon itself sang encouragement. The shadows tried again to twist around her, whispering her failures, her doubts, her loneliness. But she remembered the moon's rhythm, that steady heartbeat in the dark, and with every breath she learned to walk in tune with it. Strange ethereal beings began to emerge from the darkness, not quite spirits, not quite beasts. Their forms shimmered like reflections on water. Some had the shape of owls, others of wolves or graceful deer, all woven from moonlight and silence. They did not speak with words, but their presence comforted her. When she stumbled, they circled her gently, lifting her spirit. When she hesitated, they turned their glowing eyes toward the faint light ahead, reminding her to continue. At one point, a vast chasm opened before her, an abyss of shifting black mist. It stretched endlessly and no light touched its bottom. The moon's glow above dimmed for a moment, and the voices of the shadows grew louder, mocking her, "You can go no farther. Even light must fall here." Nyla trembled. The weight of exhaustion pressed upon her shoulders. She thought of her father's laughter, the children she used to sing for, and the joy she had once brought to her people. Were they still waiting for her? Or had they already forgotten her songs? Tears welled in her eyes, and as they fell, the moonlight caught them, turning each drop into a tiny orb of silver that hovered before her. The tears joined together, forming a fragile bridge of light across the abyss. She took a breath and stepped forward. The bridge trembled beneath her feet, but it held. Every step she took made it stronger, and the dark voices grew fainter. When she finally reached the other side, she looked back and saw that the bridge no longer glowed for her alone. It shimmered brightly, as though left behind for others who might be lost in their own shadows someday. The lunar beings bowed their heads as she passed. One of them, a tall figure shaped like a woman but made entirely of moonlight, approached Nyla. Her eyes were calm pools of silver, and when she spoke, her voice echoed like distant bells. "You have walked the path that no shadow can claim. Remember this, the light that grows within you is not borrowed, it is born." Nyla placed her hand over her heart. She could feel it, the glow no longer came from the moon alone. It pulsed from within her chest, a living flame of serenity and strength. She realized that she had not been merely following the moon's light, she had been learning from it. The moon had taught her patience to wait without despair. It had taught her humility, to shine quietly without pride. And it had taught her courage to rise again even when surrounded by darkness. As she ascended the final slope within the cavern, beams of silver light poured down through the cracks above. The air shimmered with mist, and she could smell the crisp scent of the outside world. The shadows recoiled completely, unable to follow her any longer. They hissed and twisted, but their strength faded as the moonlight filled every corner. When she finally stepped into the open air, the night sky greeted her like an old friend. The moon hung directly above, vast and luminous, painting the world in silver. Nyla looked up and whispered her gratitude. The moon's glow seemed to brighten in reply, and the same calm voice that had once whispered to her in the dark spoke again, soft and full of pride. Walk with grace, child of light. For those who learn from shadows can guide others out of them. Nyla smiled. Her heart, once weighed down by fear, now felt light as the moon itself. She knew her journey was not yet over. The village still slept under the chill of her absence, but she was no longer lost. Guided by lunar light, she had found herself again. The night turned heavy as Soraya stood before her mirror, her trembling hands clutching a bowl filled with black water. The reflection in it rippled, showing not her own face, but the restless shapes of the shadow spirits she had bound to her will. Their voices hissed and clawed at her thoughts, urging her to act before the moon grew stronger. Fear twisted within her heart, but jealousy burned brighter. If she returns, Soraya whispered, she will outshine me once more. I will not let the light win. Outside, the moon had risen high, full and watchful. Its light slid across the earth like soft silk, tracing the path Nyla had taken. Deep within the hills, Nyla felt that glow calling her forward, gentle but commanding. Each step she took pulsed with the rhythm of the moon's heart, the same one that had guided her through darkness. Yet in the air something shifted. The wind trembled. A chill spread across the land as though the night itself were holding its breath. From the horizon, clouds began to crawl, black and thick, swallowing the stars. The moon's face dimmed behind them. The world darkened. Soraya had begun her ritual. Back in the cavern from which she had escaped, the shadows stirred violently, drawn by the force of their mistress's call. They rose like a storm, swirling with hatred, their tendrils spreading outward toward the light. When they found Nyla standing on the ridge, bathed in the silver glow, they howled as one, a sound like tearing wind and broken glass. Nyla's heart pounded, but she did not retreat. She could feel the pull of fear, the urge to run back into hiding. But she remembered what the lunar spirit had told her. The light that grows within you is not borrowed, it is born. She closed her eyes, lifted her face to the darkened sky and whispered, then let it rise. The first bolt of shadow struck her like a whip, wrapping around her arm, burning cold. Soraya's voice echoed from afar, carried on the wind, your glow will fade tonight, child. The moon cannot save you now. Nyla's knees buckled, but she pressed her hand to her chest. Beneath her skin warmth gathered, faint at first, then blinding. She raised her head, and her eyes gleamed with silver light. The shadows recoiled. The moon, though half-covered, pulsed once, twice, and then burst through the veil of clouds. The world ignited in radiance. Light poured from the heavens, surrounding Nyla like a crown. The darkness screamed as the two forces met, shadow against silver. Each wave of darkness that struck her dissolved into mist when it touched her glow. The battle raged silently, like two tides colliding, yet in Nyla's heart there was only stillness. She understood now, her light was not about power but about peace. It was not meant to destroy, only to reveal. Soraya, seeing her shadows falter, screamed into the night, "Obey me!" But the shadows turned against her. The same darkness she had nurtured began to drag her down, hungry for her fear. She stumbled, clawing at the air as Nyla's light spread further, illuminating everything it touched, every tree, every stone, every trembling corner of the night. The sky cracked open as the moon reached its full brilliance, pushing away the last of the clouds. An eclipse began, but not of shadow swallowing light. It was light consuming shadow, leaving behind only calm silver clarity. The wind roared, carrying with it a whisper of the lunar spirit's voice, soft yet powerful, "This is not vengeance, but balance." When the storm finally stilled, Soraya fell to her knees, her dark power shattered. The shadows dissolved into harmless dust, vanishing with the night's retreat. Nyla stood radiant, her light now steady and strong, her gaze filled with both sorrow and understanding. She stepped forward, her voice gentle yet echoing with celestial strength. Darkness cannot feed on what is whole, she said softly. You tried to silence me, but I learned that true light does not need permission to shine. As dawn approached, the moon faded gracefully, leaving behind the first gold hues of morning. Nyla's glow dimmed into a soft warmth, still present but peaceful. The confrontation had ended, not in victory or defeat but in revelation. The girl who had been fed to shadows now stood as the bridge between darkness and light, her courage forever etched into the memory of the moon. When Nyla stepped from the mouth of the cavern, the air itself seemed to sigh with relief. The night was quiet, save for the soft rustle of leaves and the hum of the wind through the grass. The silver glow that surrounded her pulsed gently, like the rhythm of a living heart. Each breath she took carried with it a faint shimmer of light, as though the moon had woven its own breath into hers. The darkness that had once clung to her feet now recoiled, melting into the soil and vanishing into silence. Above her, the moon hung full and vast, no longer veiled by clouds or shadow. Its light poured down in radiant waves, coating Nyla's form in a brilliance so pure it seemed unearthly. Her hair glowed like flowing strands of moonlight, cascading over her shoulders, catching the silver gleam with every subtle movement. Her skin bore a faint luminescence, soft yet enduring, while her eyes mirrored the night sky, endless, clear and filled with distant stars. The villagers who had once mourned her began to gather at the edge of the hill, drawn by the strange and wondrous light. They whispered her name in disbelief, unsure if what they saw was truly her or a spirit sent by the heavens. But when Nyla turned toward them, the gentle smile on her lips was unmistakably human, warm, forgiving and full of grace. The same girl they had loved had returned, but now she seemed touched by something divine. The ground beneath her feet trembled faintly, not with fear or destruction but with reverence. The earth seemed to recognize her, as if greeting one of its own reborn. From the heart of the moon's radiance, a form began to take shape, the lunar spirit who had watched over her during her darkest hours. It appeared as a tall, graceful figure made entirely of light, its face serene and its eyes infinite with wisdom. My child of light and shadow, the spirit's voice echoed, both gentle and commanding, you have endured what few can face. You were swallowed by darkness, yet you refused to dim. You learned that true radiance does not destroy the night, it transforms it. Nyla lowered her gaze, her voice trembling softly. I did not think I could survive, she admitted, her tone like the rustle of wind through leaves. But the moon, it spoke to me. It reminded me that even in silence, light still breathes. The lunar spirit raised a hand, and beams of silver energy swirled through the air, gathering above Nyla's head. They wove together into a crown, not of gold or jewels but of pure moonlight. When the crown descended, it rested weightlessly upon her brow, and the world around her brightened. The shadows that lingered at the edges of the forest dissolved completely, retreating beyond sight, leaving the land renewed and peaceful. You are now the beacon of night, said the spirit. Let your light remind the world that hope does not fear darkness, it is born within it. Tears glistened on Nyla's cheeks, catching the moonlight and turning into tiny prisms of silver. The villagers fell to their knees, awed and humbled, their hearts swelling with reverence. Flowers began to bloom in the moon's glow, their petals shimmering pale blue and white. As the spirit faded into the stars, Nyla stood quietly under the vast sky. Her light did not blaze like fire, it shimmered softly, endlessly like a promise. The moonlight wrapped around her shoulders like a silken cloak, and she felt the universe breathe in harmony with her heart. For the first time since her descent into darkness, Nyla smiled without sorrow. The night was no longer her prison. It was her home, and the moon her eternal embrace. Soraya stood at the edge of the trembling forest, her face pale beneath the fading stars. The air around her had grown heavy and cold, thick with the residue of a power she could no longer command. When she saw Nyla standing beneath the moonlight, her form radiant, her hair glimmering like silver flame, Soraya's breath caught in her throat. For a heartbeat she thought she was seeing a ghost. But when Nyla turned toward her, eyes filled not with vengeance but calm, Soraya's heart twisted with something unfamiliar, fear. You should have been gone, Soraya hissed, her voice shaking. The shadows were meant to consume you. I offered you to them. How dare you defy their will? Her hands trembled as she raised them, calling out the dark incantations that once made the shadows obey. But this time the darkness did not come. The earth was still. The moon hung high and unblinking, its pale light washing away the tendrils of night that once answered her command. Nyla stepped forward, each movement graceful and deliberate. The light that surrounded her was not harsh, It was soft, but impossibly powerful, like truth made visible. The villagers gathered behind her, silent witnesses to a confrontation that felt larger than any they had ever known. "Soraya," Nyla said gently, her voice carrying across the air like the whisper of wind on still water. "You gave me to the darkness, but the moon gave me back. You cannot steal what was never yours to command. My light was born of kindness, not power." The stepmother's eyes flickered with rage and desperation. "You think yourself divine now, don't you? You think you've risen above me, glowing like some saint while I am left to fade." Her voice broke. "I wanted only to be seen, Nyla. To be admired, to be loved." Nyla's gaze softened. "Love does not come from taking what others have," she said. "It grows from giving what you already hold." The moon above brightened suddenly as if acknowledging Nyla's words. Its light expanded, washing over the trees, the fields, and the faces of everyone gathered. Soraya lifted her arms to shield her eyes, but the glow seeped through her fingers, exposing every hidden shadow in her heart. The villagers gasped as the truth unfurled before them, not in words but in visions of light and shadow dancing through the air. They saw Soraya whispering with dark spirits, weaving lies and binding Nyla's fate beneath the earth. Every act of envy and cruelty she had sown was revealed in the open night. "No," Soraya cried, stumbling backward as the vision swirled around her. "Stop. They weren't supposed to see." But the light did not stop. It was not there to punish, it was there to reveal. And as the last illusion faded, Soraya collapsed to her knees. Her strength left her like water draining from a cracked vessel. Around her feet, the ground began to stir, not with light but with shadows. Yet these were not the hungry, devouring shadows she once commanded. They were calm, cool, and strangely compassionate. They rose gently, swirling around her body like a dark mist, pulling away the shimmering aura of deceit that had long cloaked her. Her face lost its sharp malice, replaced by the weary truth of a woman consumed by her own bitterness. The villagers watched in silence as the shadows enveloped her, lifting the poison of envy from her spirit, stripping her of her false strength until only her fragile humanity remained. Soraya's sobs broke through the stillness. "What am I without power?" she whispered. "Free," Nyla replied softly. The moon's light dimmed slightly, settling into a tranquil glow that seemed to accept both women, the broken and the healed. Nyla stepped closer, kneeling before her stepmother. "The darkness you called tried to destroy me, but it only taught me what light truly means. You don't need to steal it. You only need to remember it was always within you." Soraya looked up, tears streaking her cheeks. The once proud woman who had commanded spirits and deceived a village, now knelt in silence, the remnants of her arrogance gone. The villagers, who had watched with awe and fear, began to murmur among themselves, not in scorn but in awe of the justice that had unfolded. The oldest among them stepped forward, bowing his head toward Nyla. "The moon has judged with truth," he said. "The earth saw your suffering and the heavens now honor your light." Nyla shook her head gently. "It was not judgment," she said. "It was understanding." As she spoke, the wind began to move through the fields once more, soft and steady, carrying away the heaviness that had clung to the village for so long. Flowers began to bloom where the moonlight touched the soil, faintly glowing petals opening like small lanterns of peace. Soraya bowed her head, her voice barely audible. "I am sorry, Nyla." The young woman smiled faintly, her silver hair swaying in the light breeze. "Then let that be your beginning," she said. The moon rose higher, casting its serene light over both of them. In that moment, it was not light versus dark, nor innocence against guilt, it was balance. The villagers watched in reverent silence as Nyla reached out and helped her stepmother to her feet. The shadows that once sought to devour had now become gentle, drifting away like mist, leaving behind a stillness that felt sacred. And as the night deepened, the moon shone brighter than ever, a witness to the triumph not just of light over darkness, but of forgiveness over fear. The night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that felt like it was waiting for something to happen. Nyla followed her stepmother, Soraya, down the forest path, her lantern casting soft circles of gold over the dirt. Soraya had told her they were going to fetch herbs for an evening remedy, something special to help the villagers rest better. Nyla, ever trusting, had agreed without hesitation. The trees thickened around them, their branches curling like fingers over the narrow trail. The deeper they went, the dimmer the moonlight became until even the stars seemed to fade. When they reached a small clearing, Nyla noticed the ground seemed different, damp, almost breathing. In the center lay a hollow, a gaping mouth in the earth from which a cold wind whispered. Soraya's tone changed, low and sharp. "Go on, child," she said. "Look inside. There's a plant that grows here, one that glows in the dark. Fetch it for me." Nyla hesitated. Something in the air felt wrong. "Stepmother," she said softly, "it feels strange here." "Do as I say," Soraya snapped, her face shadowed by the lantern's flickering light. With a nervous breath, Nyla knelt beside the opening and leaned forward. The scent of soil and something older, something like ash, filled her nose. Then, before she could react, a shove sent her tumbling forward. She screamed, reaching for the edge, but her fingers grasped only air. The light from the lantern vanished above as the earth swallowed her whole. She landed hard on cold stone, the sound echoing into endless darkness. Pain shot through her body, but she forced herself up. Around her, faint whispers rustled like dry leaves, hundreds of them circling, weaving, waiting. She couldn't see where they came from, only that the shadows themselves seemed alive. "Nyla," the voices murmured, soft and terrible. "So full of light. So foolish to bring it here." The air turned heavy and she could feel them, hands of darkness reaching for her ankles, pulling, dragging. Her heart pounded as she tried to run, but the floor itself shifted beneath her, swallowing her steps. The shadows wrapped around her arms and legs, cold and thick as smoke. "No," she whispered, trembling. "You cannot take me." But they did not stop. They coiled around her body, pressing into her skin until her breath came short. The darkness seeped into her mouth, stealing her words, silencing her cries. She tried to scream, to call for help, but no sound came out, only the hollow echo of her breath. Yet even in the suffocating dark, a faint warmth stirred in her chest. Memories flickered before her closed eyes. Her mother's laughter, the way sunlight used to dance on her window, the joy of the villagers when she smiled. Her heart refused to let those things go. "You may take my voice," she thought fiercely, though no words escaped her lips. "But you cannot take my heart." The shadows hissed, tightening around her. "You will fade," they whispered. "No one will remember your light." But deep inside her, something began to glow, a faint pulse of silver radiance, like moonlight beneath water. The shadows recoiled slightly, writhing as if in pain. Nyla didn't know what strength fueled her, only that she could not let go. She pressed her hands together, drawing that inner light closer, protecting it. The cavern trembled faintly, as though the earth itself recognized her defiance. For every inch the shadows pressed in, her spirit pushed back. Her body weakened, her limbs heavy, but her heart burned brighter. Above, the faintest trace of moonlight slipped through a crack in the stone, falling across her face. It was small, fragile, but enough. The shadows shuddered. Their whispers grew frantic, retreating slightly from the silvery touch. Nyla lifted her head toward the light she could barely see. Her lips formed a single, silent word: hope. And though her voice was gone, the air seemed to carry the sound for her, echoing softly through the chamber. The darkness did not vanish, but it could not claim her completely. Her body might be trapped beneath the earth, but her light, her goodness, remained unbroken, waiting for the moon to find her. The night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that felt like it was waiting for something to happen. Nyla followed her stepmother, Soraya, down the forest path, her lantern casting soft circles of gold over the dirt. Soraya had told her they were going to fetch herbs for an evening remedy, something special to help the villagers rest better. Nyla, ever trusting, had agreed without hesitation. The trees thickened around them, their branches curling like fingers over the narrow trail. The deeper they went, the dimmer the moonlight became until even the stars seemed to fade. When they reached a small clearing, Nyla noticed the ground seemed different, damp, almost breathing. In the center lay a hollow, a gaping mouth in the earth from which a cold wind whispered. Soraya's tone changed, low and sharp. "Go on, child," she said. "Look inside. There's a plant that grows here, one that glows in the dark. Fetch it for me." Nyla hesitated. Something in the air felt wrong. "Stepmother," she said softly, "it feels strange here." "Do as I say," Soraya snapped, her face shadowed by the lantern's flickering light. With a nervous breath, Nyla knelt beside the opening and leaned forward. The scent of soil and something older, something like ash, filled her nose. Then, before she could react, a shove sent her tumbling forward. She screamed, reaching for the edge, but her fingers grasped only air. The light from the lantern vanished above as the earth swallowed her whole. She landed hard on cold stone, the sound echoing into endless darkness. Pain shot through her body, but she forced herself up. Around her, faint whispers rustled like dry leaves, hundreds of them circling, weaving, waiting. She couldn't see where they came from, only that the shadows themselves seemed alive. Nyla, the voices murmured, soft and terrible. So full of light. So foolish to bring it here. The air turned heavy and she could feel them, hands of darkness reaching for her ankles, pulling, dragging. Her heart pounded as she tried to run, but the floor itself shifted beneath her, swallowing her steps. The shadows wrapped around her arms and legs, cold and thick as smoke. "No," she whispered, trembling. "You cannot take me." But they did not stop. They coiled around her body, pressing into her skin until her breath came short. The darkness seeped into her mouth, stealing her words, silencing her cries. She tried to scream, to call for help, but no sound came out, only the hollow echo of her breath. Yet even in the suffocating dark, a faint warmth stirred in her chest. Memories flickered before her closed eyes. Her mother's laughter, the way sunlight used to dance on her window, the joy of the villagers when she smiled. Her heart refused to let those things go. "You may take my voice," she thought fiercely, though no words escaped her lips. "But you cannot take my heart." The shadows hissed, tightening around her. "You will fade," they whispered. "No one will remember your light." But deep inside her, something began to glow, a faint pulse of silver radiance, like moonlight beneath water. The shadows recoiled slightly, writhing as if in pain. Nyla didn't know what strength fueled her, only that she could not let go. She pressed her hands together, drawing that inner light closer, protecting it. The cavern trembled faintly, as though the earth itself recognized her defiance. For every inch the shadows pressed in, her spirit pushed back. Her body weakened, her limbs heavy, but her heart burned brighter. Above, the faintest trace of moonlight slipped through a crack in the stone, falling across her face. It was small, fragile, but enough. The shadows shuddered. Their whispers grew frantic, retreating slightly from the silvery touch. Nyla lifted her head toward the light she could barely see. Her lips formed a single, silent word: hope. And though her voice was gone, the air seemed to carry the sound for her, echoing softly through the chamber. The darkness did not vanish, but it could not claim her completely. Her body might be trapped beneath the earth, but her light, her goodness, remained unbroken, waiting for the moon to find her. As dawn broke over the village, an unnatural chill hung in the air. The fields, once alive with the scent of ripe grain and the buzz of insects, now lay silent and gray. The soil that had once welcomed seed and sun seemed to reject both. Crops yellowed before reaching their height, and even the sturdy banana trees sagged under invisible weight. Goats bleated aimlessly, chickens refused to lay, and the dogs, usually loyal guardians, howled through the night as though calling to a spirit they could no longer find. Whispers began to ripple through the market square. "Where is Nyla?" some asked in hushed tones. "She was seen by the river last," said one old man, his wrinkled hands trembling as he adjusted his woven hat. The younger ones searched along the riverbanks, through the forest paths she used to wander, calling her name into the thickening silence. But the only answer was the echo of their own fear. In her hut, Soraya sat by the fire, her face calm yet pale beneath its flickering glow. When questioned, she would sigh heavily and say, "The girl left of her own will. She always longed for strange things, perhaps she went chasing the moon." Her tone was laced with weary disappointment, but beneath her measured words was something else, something darker, unreadable. No one dared to challenge her. She had always been respected, feared even, for her commanding presence and her sharp tongue that could silence a crowd. Yet the villagers could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The rhythm of life had been broken. Children who once ran laughing through the fields now huddled close to their mothers, uneasy. The elders who spoke of omens began marking the days since Nyla's disappearance, counting the moons, muttering prayers for her safe return. The drums, which once signaled joy, were silent. The evenings felt longer, the nights heavier. The healer of the village, an old woman named Amma, was the first to speak openly of what others feared to say. She stood in the village square one dusk, leaning on her carved staff, and declared, "Her light is gone, and so the village dims. The moon weeps for her absence. Until she is found, no harvest will bless our hands." The villagers listened in silence. They knew Amma's words carried weight. They remembered how Nyla's laughter used to fill the air, how her presence had seemed to invite fortune itself. At night, mothers told their children stories of Nyla's kindness, how she had cared for the orphan lambs, how her songs could calm even the angriest spirit. Some said they could still hear her voice carried on the wind, soft and mournful, like the sigh of the moon over distant hills. Others claimed to see her shadow reflected in the river, shimmering for just a moment before dissolving into ripples. Soraya began to feel the shift too. Though she feigned indifference, her sleep grew restless. The shadows in her hut seemed to move on their own, whispering when the fire burned low. Once, as she fetched water from the well, she saw her reflection tremble, not from the wind, but as if the water itself recoiled from her touch. Her chest tightened, and for a fleeting second she thought she saw Nyla's eyes staring back at her from beneath the surface. She quickly looked away. The villagers too started avoiding Soraya's hut. Where once they sought her advice, now they crossed to the other path. The aura around her home felt colder, heavier. Rumors spread that she had driven Nyla away, that she had done something unspeakable. But no one dared accuse her aloud. The moon that month appeared dimmer, as though veiled by sorrow. Its light no longer touched the village with silver warmth. Instead, it cast pale, trembling beams across the fields. The women who fetched water at night whispered that the moon had turned its face away, grieving the loss of its chosen child. One evening, as the villagers gathered around the dying fire in the center of the square, a child spoke softly, "If the moon misses her, maybe we should call her back." The old men chuckled bitterly, but Amma nodded gravely. "Yes," she said, "we must call to her, not with our voices but with our hearts. For the bond between the moon and the pure cannot be severed by lies or darkness." So that night, they stood together under the fading moonlight. They sang the lullaby Nyla had once sung to the fields, their voices trembling yet hopeful. The song floated through the air, weaving through the huts, over the dying crops and toward the river. And though no one could see her, far beneath the ground where shadows whispered and pulsed, a faint glow flickered in response, fragile but unyielding. Nyla's body might have been lost to darkness, but her spirit heard the song. The village mourned, unaware that their sorrow had become a beacon. The moon watched in silence, preparing the night for what was yet to come, the awakening of the light they thought was gone forever. High above the sleeping village, the moon drifted through a restless sky. Its silver face, usually serene, now trembled with unease. The stars seemed dimmer, their glow muffled by a sorrow that spread through the heavens. The moon had watched over Nyla since the night of her birth, had marked her as one touched by light, and now it could feel her fading deep beneath the earth. Something ancient stirred within its glow, a call, a plea, a promise not to let her light be extinguished. Beneath its gentle gaze, the land slept in grief. The fields lay bare, the rivers whispered of loss, and even the winds carried mourning in their sighs. Yet the moon's beams did not rest. They stretched and bent, searching across the hills and through the forests, seeking the faint pulse of the girl who once sang beneath its radiance. When the light finally brushed against the cracks of the hidden cavern, it trembled, an almost imperceptible flicker of silver sliding through stone and shadow. Inside, the darkness writhed as if sensing intrusion. The shadows, thick and pulsing like smoke, recoiled at the touch of moonlight. They hissed and curled back, huddling deeper into corners where the light could not reach. But even there they could not stop it. The moon's light was not just brightness, it was warmth, memory and love bound into one silent force. It seeped through the smallest fissures, weaving threads of comfort through the cold air. Where Nyla lay trapped, her body bound by shadowy tendrils, her mind hovered between despair and defiance. She felt the chill creeping through her bones, the whispering lies that told her she was forgotten, that her light had never mattered. But then, faintly at first, she sensed it, a cool touch against her face, soft and soothing, like the hand of a mother brushing away tears. Her lashes fluttered, and through the veil of darkness she glimpsed a faint silver shimmer. A voice followed, low and melodic, carried by the moon's glow. "Child of light," it murmured, "the darkness does not own you. It fears you." The voice was neither man nor woman, but something eternal, an echo of the lunar spirit that had watched since the world's first night. "You were born beneath my gaze," it said, "and my light remembers you. Let it enter your heart and you shall not be lost." The words sank into Nyla like warmth into frozen earth. The shadows around her hissed louder, tightening their hold, but she no longer trembled. She felt her heartbeat steady, slow but strong, like the rhythm of drums from her village during harvest nights. The silver glow deepened, wrapping her like a fragile cocoon. The darkness tried to choke it out, but for every inch it gained, the light answered with quiet defiance. Above the cavern, the moon brightened, its pale face gleaming against the dark expanse. The villagers, tossing in uneasy sleep, stirred as silver beams slipped through their windows. The old healer Amma woke and looked to the sky, whispering, "The moon keeps vigil. She is not gone." The wind, gentle now, carried the words through the huts, into dreams and across the river. Deep below, Nyla's lips parted, and though her voice was faint, she breathed a single word, light. The cavern responded with a tremor, the air quivering with unseen power. The shadows recoiled again, uncertain, sensing a force greater than their hunger. The moon continued to pour its radiance down, unwavering. The lunar spirit hovered, whispering songs of courage through the threads of light that touched Nyla's skin. "Endure, my child," it said. "The night is long, but dawn always remembers the moon." And though Nyla's eyes remained closed, her heart glowed faintly with silver warmth, pulsing in rhythm with the sky above. The darkness still surrounded her, but it could no longer claim victory, for where light remembers, shadows must wait in fear.